right now. Let's play with Ian Castleberry. Of course, our NFL Gold Nuggets feature with Ian presented by David Creasman and DC Creasman Jewelers. And Ian Castleberry, how you doing on this kind of overcast blah Thursday?
Yeah, doing well despite that.
I know. I kind of I'm not a guy, Mike, that's run by the weather, but I'm like, oh man, this is like one of these wacky, just one of these weather days. You just I gotta work a little harder to get rolling. Guys, let's start first with Jaguars coach Urban Meyer said there's no chance he would take the USC job. Of course, Clay Helton fired Tuesday. And once you know it, guys, Urban Meyer's name pops up. That is so unfair. I mean, the guy's just coached one game in the NFL, and you think he's going to go back to college football. But Ian, okay, so Urban said no. Has he expanded on that statement?
No, not really. I mean, I think he made a pretty definitive statement, at least in his mind. So for him, I guess that's the final word on it. Urban Meyer's name would have come up had he not taken this Jacksonville Jaguars job. In fact, that's one reason why I was surprised he took the Jaguars job to begin with, because I thought, well, what about USC? What about Texas? If those jobs open up. I don't think Urban Meyer is going to take the USC job. He will be a candidate. I think Mike Bohn, the USC athletic director, would be crazy not to make that phone call. But just 1 year into his contract, also just the logistics of it in terms of scheduling. Urban Meyer's not going to bolt the Jaguars mid-season. I mean, he could pull a Bobby Petrino or something like that, but I think his reputation would really take a hit, and it would cement him never working in the NFL again, I think. But even coaching a bad Jaguars team, he's going to be coaching through December into January, and that's prime recruiting time for any college coach. And I think USC wants somebody who can come in and start the recruiting drive as soon as possible. Probably in November. So, I would look at James Franklin at Penn State maybe as the top candidate. I've heard Bill O'Brien's name mentioned. I think he would be really good. He's an analyst right now for Nick Saban at Alabama, Nick Saban's coaching rehab clinic there. I think he could be really good for that job. There's a lot of other guys who would be good for that job, but, Urban Meyer's an exceptional college coach. As a Michigan fan, we've been on the business end of plenty of Urban Meyer's success. So as much as I hate to admit it, he's an outstanding college coach.
Yeah, and I agree, Mike. I think Urban would have been a great fit for USC, if only for two main reasons. He's coached at the highest level, and he's had great success at the highest level, not with one program, but two programs in Florida and Ohio State. But as Ian said, that's a missed boat, and I can't imagine Urban wouldn't take an NFL job if he was completely satisfied within himself that college openings weren't going to be an issue for him.
Well, I think as Ian alluded to, he can't pull a Bobby Petrino, and I'm sure the fact we're using Bobby Petrino in the same sense with Urban Meyer probably hurts his feelings, so to speak. Anyway, and the timing just isn't right. He's got. Even with Petrino's situation, he was supposed to coach Michael Vick, and then, of course, that all fell apart with the dog situation for Michael Vick. So Petrino, he handled about as poorly as you can, but you kind of understood at some point, him leaving there because it wasn't the program he was doing. Urban's got all the power in Jacksonville as well, so that'd be asking a lot for him to do that. But his name's out there for a reason. It's not just he could have very easily denied it, and I know he did, but it's out there for a reason. So anyway, but I think you mentioned James Franklin. There's some pretty good scuttlebutt about that. Yeah. Bob Stoops did not. He didn't say no when he was asked about the former head coach of Oklahoma, who's been out for a couple of years. He didn't say no. He just talked around it. It's like very easily Bobby could stop the rumors by just saying, no, I'm not interested. Yeah. But
Franklin, the same thing.
Yeah, he didn't say it. So that would be a great Franklin's, did the miracle work in Vanderbilt and such. And then and then he's done a good job at Penn State. Not so much last year, but I think people feel like he's a good coach. And so that's one of the premier jobs in college football. And with TV contracts ending soon for conferences. I think it's at the end of the year. Start negotiating. Southern Cal really needs to hit a home run here.
Yeah, indeed they do. And don't worry about getting. I love it on that list. There's no USC guys on there. That's not worked. So move on from that. Oh, by the way, Mike, just breaking news: Bobby Petrino has an extra seat available for his motorcycle trip this weekend. You're all interested.
Did you hear what some people said at Arkansas? That great win over Texas. the other day, they beat Texas really handily, and they said that's the biggest win since the motorcycle accident.
Yeah, which got him fired from Arkansas. Yeah, it's like, by the way.
I keep laughing because I just keep picturing Bobby Petrino in that neck brace. And
yeah, I know.
Man.
Oh, man, that was so much drama. It's like he was lying the whole time. If you're unfamiliar, here's a snapshot. Bobby Petrino was having an affair. I think it was with a student.
No, she was like a former volleyball player that was like 25, 26 years old.
Was she in the administration?
It was in administration or something like that, yeah.
And
she was engaged to at the time, too.
Yeah, and he got in a motorcycle accident with her on the back seat. So to say, that was not a good moment for Bobby Petrino. Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys. We'll try and pick up the classiness on the show here. Ian, the Cowboys D-line took a major hit yesterday as DeMarcus Lawrence sidelined 6 to 8 weeks with a broken foot, and Randy Gregory may not be able to pass COVID protocol in time for Sunday's game at the Chargers. And Ian, Dallas is going to need a pass rush against Justin Herbert.
Yeah, well, they couldn't generate a pass rush even with DeMarcus Lawrence in the lineup in Week 1 against Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay has an outstanding offensive line, but the Chargers have a good offensive line. Rashawn Slater, he had an excellent Week 1 performance. They have a strong offensive line as well. So it's going to be difficult for the Cowboys to generate any sort of pass rush. I mean, Dorrance, Armstrong, Terrell, Basham. Basham had 2.5 sacks 2 years ago for the New York Jets. And then Chauncey Golston, who's one of their draft picks. So certainly no acclaimed names going to be rushing the passer for the Cowboys. So you wonder if they're going to have to try to generate a pass rush through some blitzes, bring in some linebackers, bring in some safeties. But then again, that'll open it up for Justin Herbert down the field if they're bringing people on blitzes. So this just seems like a terrible situation for the Cowboys.
Indeed it does. And Mike, looks like Dak is going to have to really make it happen offensively for the Cowboys. You're going to have to just outscore the Chargers, it looks like.
Last week on the show, one of us talked about how Dallas-Tampa would be a great game. I'm trying to. Oh, that was me. That's right. Yeah, that's right. I recall. Some of the other people on this show said it was going to be a rout, wasn't going to be a good.
That was me. That's
right.
That would be me as well.
But anyway. It looks like Dallas is back to last year. They're just going to have to outscore people, and really a heartbreaker that they played their hearts out against Tampa last week.
Yeah.
And what a great drive, that Dak ran at the end to get to the, they obviously wanted a touchdown instead of a field goal, but that's why they lost the game, is they missed a couple of field goals and an extra point, and that's why they lost it. And they gave Brady too much time on the clock to come back, and he certainly, for all the anti-Brady people out there, that certainly looked familiar, him leading that drive down the field. But Tampa's got some questions defensively. I mean, Zach is good, and he's got some good weapons, but they carved them up pretty good. And, you look at the playoffs, as good as Tampa played in the Super Bowl, and they were awesome in the Super Bowl defensively. Just amazing what they did to Patrick Mahomes and such. But, they didn't play great in the playoffs. I mean, they just kind of outscored people in the playoffs. I mean, including the Washington football team. I mean, Taylor Hinkle about beat them in the first round and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if that defense can come together like they did in the Super Bowl.
Indeed. So we'll see where this one, of course, goes. Of course, Dallas at San Diego. That's going to be the late afternoon game coming up on Sunday. As Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys via the DC Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines. And thanks to DC for bringing us Ian each and every week. And, of course, you can follow Ian, thecomeback.com, awfulannouncing.com. Remember to like both on Facebook, and at the end of the segment, looks like Ian got a little love on Twitter from a retired NFL wide receiver, now network morning show star. That's in a moment. But, Ian, it's time for Mike Gore Bills takeover question. And here it is, guys. If you want to see the Bills this season, you're going to need to be vaxxed. That's right. You're going to have to get the poke. And, Ian, how are Bills fans reacting so far to the mandate?
From what I've seen, Bills fans appear to be okay with this. Like, hey, I want to go see the Bills, so all right, I'm going to get vaccinated. I don't know if Mike's seen anything different or heard from anyone, but the response to this seems relatively positive from what I've been able to tell.
Yeah, like so many areas, COVID's hit areas hard, but it's hit the Western New York area and, of course, the state of New York very, very hard. And I think people are fine with it. To be honest with you, when I saw this story, I thought that had already been in there. I thought that had already been placed. But yes, I think that has to be done. And I hope more teams do this. If we're going to have these crowds, which you heard all. I mean, I'm sure I must have mentioned it 100 different times back when we weren't playing games. It is what our grandchildren and whatever 50 years look at a YouTube video and see 80,000 people at a game and thinking, what were you people thinking about? That was crazy with COVID, and we're back to that. So.
It was a maskless party in the Southeastern Conference last week.
Right, and so I'm all for this, and I think Bills fans are smart and are all for it as well, so I don't think it's a problem at all.
And Ian, this is the million-dollar question. Do you think other NFL teams will follow suit?
Okay, 3 other teams have already, the Saints, the Seahawks, and the Raiders. I think if you play in an indoor stadium, I think those teams will mandate a vaccination to attend. Outdoor stadiums, I think, is a little bit iffy, and of course Buffalo plays in an outdoor stadium. So I don't think you'll see all 32 NFL teams come around. It might depend on what the situation is. Mike alluded to the fact that the COVID numbers are getting bad in Western New York, and I think depending on the area, if the COVID numbers are going up, and really they're going up all over the country, so maybe there's a chance that every NFL city is dealing with this. But I think it's going to be a case-by-case, city-by-city basis.
Yeah, we'll see where this one plays out for sure. Really, it just depends on where the team's located and where. I don't know if the Dallas Cowboys are going to be, having a mask mandate. The Miami Dolphins, I don't even think can have a mask mandate. I'm not sure what's going on down there in Florida. The Buccaneers, the Jaguars, that type of. I think it just depends on where you are, the state you're in, and where you are with COVID. And it's a tough call for NFL owners, for sure. But we're in a pandemic. People tend to forget that from time to time. Oops. Ian Castleberry plays with the Wise Guys, presented by David Creasman and DC Creasman Jewelers. Ian joins us as well on the DC Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines. And Ian, what were a couple of takeaways for you from week number 1?
Are the Philadelphia Eagles better than expected?
Right.
I mean, they played the Falcons, and the Falcons might be absolutely terrible, but 32-6 win over the Falcons, that was eye-opening. Jalen Hurts had a great game, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and you have to factor in the opponent, but the Eagles looked like they could be the worst team in the NFC East, and maybe that won't be the case. Maybe the winner or loser of tonight's game could end up having that title. And I was really impressed by Jameis Winston for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, I think Sean Payton made the clear, correct choice in choosing Winston over Taysom Hill at quarterback. Winston didn't throw for a lot of yards, only threw 20 passes. That's all he had to throw. But 5 touchdowns and, most importantly, 0 interceptions. And he was Mr. Interception in Tampa Bay, which is why Bruce Arians couldn't stand him anymore. But this looks like a great match. Jameis Winston with the Saints. He played it so well, going there for a year, and then maybe taking over. I think we're going to see this is a plan I think maybe Mitch Trubisky is going to emulate with Buffalo. Obviously, he's not going to be the starter eventually in Buffalo, but I think working or sitting under a good offensive coach for one season could be a big benefit to Trubisky's career, just as has been with Winston.
Yeah, Mike, what do you make of Jalen Hurts and the Eagles? To me, that was, and Jameis Winston had shown in the preseason that he looked ready for that Saints job, so maybe it wasn't too stunning that he did as well in week 1. But to me, the Eagles, I mean, and maybe it shows, as Ian says, where Atlanta is. It's hard to figure it out after just 1 week. But, there were people like, I wasn't really comfortable with Jalen Hurts. Shoop says he doesn't think Jalen Hurts is the top 64 quarterback in the world, NFL starter and backups combined. But he sure looked great. And now they've got Gardner Minshew. I thought that was going to add pressure to him. I mean, I give him a lot of credit, man. He just, ears down on that, ignored it, and had a great game.
Well, again, a place like Philadelphia, there's not much pressure from the fans or the media there and
They're
stuff.
Very compassionate people.
So that, of course, surely helps this case. They were awful dominant. Was watching a little bit of that game while being disappointed with the Bills, but they just were incredibly dominant. Again, you just can't. First week of a season of any sport, that first game, sometimes you just don't know, and sometimes it can be a harbinger of things to come, or sometimes it can just be a mirage. So it'll be interesting to see. But that all of a sudden, that NFC East looks really it looked wide open with 3 teams. We thought Dallas, Washington, and the Giants would all have a pretty good shot, but now the Eagles think they might have a shot too. So it's going to be really fun to see how this all shapes up. But the Falcons did not look good.
No, God, good Lord. By the way, speaking of, Stan joins us the next segment, by the way. We may have to talk him down. I'm not sure, Mike, but be ready for it. All right, well, let's move to week 2. And what are some storylines heading into, obviously, week 2 gets underway tonight?
Well, maybe this is a takeaway from week 1, but I think it's certainly something to look for in week 2, and that is Mike's Buffalo Bills. That was one of the most shocking results of week 1. Their loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. How are they going to rebound from that game with an important AFC East matchup against the Dolphins?
Well, I'll be anxious to see, too. There were some good things from the Bills the other day. They ran the ball pretty well. They actually probably passed it too much, but they ran it. They actually did a pretty good job. Their defense played much better. Did a great job shutting down the Pittsburgh rushing attack except for an end around, and one good run by Najee Harris that came in the fourth quarter. But it didn't put the Steelers away in the first half. Had a kind of a tough interception call go against Tre'Davious White the Steelers' first possession. I'm not saying it decided the game, but that would have really helped. I think it was kind of a call. But, what's a little worrisome for Bills fans, including myself, is this is the 4th game in a row going back to the playoffs where Josh Allen hasn't quite been that magnificent, so to speak. The 3 games of the playoffs, he did okay, but not like he did during the regular season, just kind of chalked it up as saying the defense should play better. But he missed some open receivers, and the Steelers didn't rush many people. The Bills, unfortunately, offensive line did a terrible job with 6 holding penalties called. Amazing enough the Steelers didn't call for holding once, but I'm not going to comment on that. But anyway,
like you're calling a UNC Asheville women's basketball game all over again.
No, but anyway, this is crucial. Now Josh is 5-1 versus the Dolphins, and have had just great games against them. But if the Bills lose, which is certainly a possibility going to Miami, it's a tough game. That's a tough place. The Dolphins, are much improved, and they remember that 56-26 game that the Bills backups did against the Dolphins that knocked the Dolphins out of the playoff race. So they'll certainly be out for revenge. So it'll be interesting to see how the Dolphins react after getting that great win over the Patriots. Will there be a letdown after that? But they could. Dolphins win. They're going to be tough to catch in the AFC East because the Bills will be 2 games behind right off the bat.
Yeah, we'll see where this one plays out. Going to be one of those marquee matchups and a big one for both teams this Sunday. Ian Castleberry. All right, we can play on other week 2 storylines you're looking at.
Can Andy Dalton keep holding out Justin Fields? Andy Dalton played okay, 206 yards, 27 of 38, 1 interception, but it feels like certainly everyone in the city of Chicago, Bears fans, want Justin Fields to be the starter. Matt Nagy, it kind of tantalized everybody bringing him in for a couple of plays against the Rams, and he completed 2 passes. But is Andy Dalton going to be able to play better? More importantly, throw the ball down the field. That might not entirely be his decision, depending on what plays Matt Nagy calls. But it seems more like a win, not an if situation with Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, man. Take your time on Justin Fields. There's no rush. I don't care what Bears fans want. Let Andy Dalton handle this till Justin, let him just get a little more time under his belt. And, Andy Dalton didn't suck last week. I think sometimes people don't look at those numbers. Those are okay numbers. They're not like you suck. Bring in Justin Fields. Can he do better? Justin Fields, I just think the longer you let him soak in the NFL, soak in the game, he's just going to be that much more prepared for when he is unleashed on opponents. And again, he's shown great potential to be one of those really great quarterbacks. But, man, just slow it up a little bit sometimes. We'll see where that goes. Anything else, Ian?
Taylor Heineke tonight, starting for the Washington football team. Heartbreaking for Ryan Fitzpatrick. The hip injury is going to keep him out for 6 to 8 weeks. But I think Taylor Heineke showed some promise, especially in that wild card playoff game against the Buccaneers. Mike mentioned how Tampa Bay's defense didn't look particularly impressive until the Super Bowl. Heineke played well. He threw for 306 yards, showed some good running talent. I think he rushed for another touchdown. He looked like somebody who could be promising and maybe could have been the starter, although you certainly understand Washington wanting a more veteran presence. But I'm very curious how Taylor Heineke is going to play tonight against the New York Giants.
Yeah, man. And, that the Washington football team, I follow them a little more closely because of Ron Rivera. And we saw Taylor Heineke didn't do too bad backing up with the Panthers and coming in to relieve Fitzpatrick last week. So that's going to be a big one tonight coming up. And, again, Thursday Night Football. The Giants at the Washington football team. Ian, we got to run. This was awesome, as always. And again, You can follow Ian Castleberry on Facebook. And also, before we let you go, tell us about a tweet you sent out that caught the attention of Nate Burleson.
Oh, Nate Burleson, yes, of the NFL Today, a new host on CBS Morning. He also hosts this show on Wednesday nights. Maybe you guys have paid attention that Nickelodeon and the NFL are doing these things. Nickelodeon had a kids-themed broadcast last year for the Saints-Bears playoff game. So he's hosting a show called NFL Slime Time on Nickelodeon. And they made a comment about pizza, and that immediately reminded me of Burleson, who played for the Lions, got in an auto accident and broke his arm because he swerved trying to avoid a truck, and he had pizzas on the passenger seat. And reaching out to try and prevent the pizzas from falling off the seat, ended up crashing into the median and breaking his arm. So I said, oh, it would have been great if Burleson had made a reference to that while talking about pizza, which obviously they're not going to do that on a kid's show. But Burleson apparently thought that was funny. He retweeted that tweet. I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter, but definitely a pleasant surprise this morning.
Right on. Look at Ian grabbing the attention of the big shooters for sure. Buddy, always appreciate you. It's such a great time. And have a great weekend.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank
Enjoy the
you.
rest of your week.
You too. Thank you, Ian. Ian Castleberry, presented by David Creasman and DC Creasman Jewelers.